Data protection and privacy teams are under more pressure than ever with new laws, AI oversight, data breaches, and the constant expectation to do more with fewer resources.
That's why TrustArc built a modern privacy and data protection management platform powered by Arc Intelligence. It unifies your tools, automates the work that slows you down, and surfaces what matters most right when you need it.
From guided quick actions to our intelligent assistant, Ask Arc, you get credible, contextual answers backed by expert research, not generic AI guesses.
Finally, privacy that works the way privacy pros work.
Learn how TrustArc helps teams move faster with confidence at trustarc.com/serious-privacy. That's trustarc.com/serious-privacy.
This is Serious Privacy. Here are your hosts, Paul Breitbart and Kay Royal.
Hello, and welcome to Serious Privacy. This week, Paul is actually off at the conference doing conference thing. And so we have asked our delightful, informal co-host. We should actually make him pretty formal because he's basically the only co-host we use because we like him. I've asked Ralph O'Brien to come join us for the show. Now, the funny thing is, Ralph is at the same conference that Paul is. But
Paul is much more important than I am. His diary, his booked out. He actually put on LinkedIn, there are luxury horses and there are workhorses, and Paul is the luxury horse.
Oh, there you go. So we've invited the workhorse to the podcast. And the good thing is we have plenty of privacy stuff to talk about this week. Rather than last week was the kitchen sink and all the extra things to catch up. We actually have some pretty cool developments this week. So my name is Kay Royal.
My name is Ralph O'Brien, and welcome to Serious Privacy.
Ralph, what if I let you ask the unexpected question? Do you have one? Make up.
Well, an unexpected question. Well, funnily enough, I was just talking about food. We were just having a wonderful conversation about food. Just we left with Paul Jordan, who used to be the managing director of Europe for IAPP.
Yeah.
And Paul was talking about his preference for a massive Irish full English breakfast, or that's a bit of a contradiction in terms. So there you go. Breakfast, light or heavy?
I'm going to say light. My husband brings me breakfast in bed every day and has done so for going on 22 years, unless I'm not here, of course. But right now, my breakfast is pretty healthy. It typically consists of scrambled eggs and blackberries. This morning I had bacon and blackberries, so I guess that's considered pretty light.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Yeah, I'm a perhaps understandable from English and Irish heritage. I'm a full English person myself, so I like to fill up and to be full for the rest of the day and asleep by mid-morning, right?
Yes, yes. That just basically takes care of the whole day. You can just snack for the rest of the day, right?
Indeed.
Yeah, I'm trying to lose these extra COVID pounds that, the whole world has gained mainly. Most people, I think, have tried to work theirs off. Mine ain't happening. I'm trying, people. I'm trying. But here we go. And the only problem it really bothers me is, one, it impacts my health because, we don't want diabetes and all that stuff. But two, I have so many cute clothes that don't fit anymore, and I don't want to go buy a whole new wardrobe. So, okay, here we go. Let's actually talk about some privacy stuff. Like I said, we got significant things. I think yours are a little bit more momentous than mine are, so let me throw mine out there really quick. This is really quick. Tennessee actually did sign their privacy bill into law. It was on May 11th, so just last week or two ago. So we have that. Montana and Texas have not signed yet. And to my knowledge, we have not had another one pass yet. I'm looking quickly. I don't see another one that is passed yet. Let's give another shout out to IAPP for their state legislation tracker because we absolutely love it. And I will say that that's about it for the U.S. That's really momentous right now. We have a few other things that have really happened momentously in Europe. And what would you like to start? I was about to say, Paul, what would you like to start with, Ralph?
So, yeah, I mean, but in a way, isn't that beautiful, actually, that you've got to check day by day in the US to see a new development? Isn't that what, would we have seen that a year ago? I just think that's amazing, right?
No, it is. We've got 10. We're up to 10. I think that not that have passed or signed. I think we're up to 8 that have signed and go into effect. Not to mention the Washington My Health, My Data app, which will go into most effect in 2024 for most of their provisions. And so that one's to wait on. But yeah, it's pretty cool watching things move and groove in the U.S. when it comes to privacy, especially once we're not doing the one that really, really matters. The federal privacy law.
Federal
privacy
law.
Well, and there's no guarantee that just because states pass it, that the federal will, because every state has their own data privacy breach notification law, but the federal yet has to pass one. So there's no guarantee that just because there'll be 50 different privacy laws that the federal will. However, I think the differences in the privacy laws are a little bit more significant than the breach notification laws.
They are. And, while you're dealing with 50 different privacy laws, we're still dealing with the fallout of our one. So the biggest news from Europe this week, of course, is the DPC decision on Meta that most people listening to this will know resulted in a 1.2 million euro. That is a 1.2 billion.
Yes, I was going to say you're a little lower.
Yeah. And or $1.3 billion in US money penalty. And perhaps more important than that, 6 months to suspend their transfers and delete the data that has been transferred.
Now, did they order the data to be deleted? Because I think I read something that there was no order for the data to be deleted. They just had to bring their transfer mechanisms into alignment.
Well, it's difficult to bring them into alignment when there's almost no option left for them to align to.
The thingy. We had the thingy, right? We're all basing our hopes on the thingy. Well, the EU-US cross-border privacy transfer framework, something thingy.
I think it's worth saying it's not a good look for the DPC because it's actually the European Data Protection Board, of course, that has forced the DPC's hand in this. And even though the judgment officially comes from the DPC, it's obviously in Ireland, who is the lead regulator. It's obviously the European Data Protection Board making the assessment with the rest of the privacy regulators of Europe against Meta. Now you are quite right. The thingy, because Meta's response, Nick Clegg, the old UK Deputy Prime Minister, now Facebook Head of Communications, has put out a really interesting response or rebuttal, perhaps.
Okay.
And it seems to me based on 5 points. I mean, their first point was service will continue and we will appeal. Fair enough. Number 2, their second point was basically if everyone else is doing it, why can't we? It's a bit like we're the victims here.
Google's
doing
it. Why can't we?
Google's doing it. China's doing it. Why focus on the US? And to be fair, I kind of sympathize with them a tiny bit. I mean, hey,
Scale matters. Scale matters.
Their next point was it's US surveillance at fault, not us. We're being penalized for something that's essentially an EU versus US policy problem, regardless of the fact that we're transferring the data, which I think is an interesting sort of point.
It's interesting, yeah.
And their next point is the new executive order solves this all, right?
Of course it does. It solves everything.
Except for the fact it doesn't. I've just come from the CPDP conference here in Brussels, where we've just been privileged enough to listen to Commissioner Didier Reynders. And, he said, look, we're not there yet. We're implementing this new decision. The US plans to implement this new court and the new necessity and proportionality, hopefully by November. And it's only then we can start to think about a new adequacy or equivalent international agreement for the US. So we are in this sort of weird gap space at the moment where it's a really interesting situation. And I think that their last point, their fifth point, was basically how dare the EDPB overrule the DPC, who are always nice to us. It's, what sort of administration are we dealing with here where Europe can overrule the local regulator? And I think
isn't that the basis of the lawsuit from the Irish DPC?
Well, exactly, yeah. And it's not a good look for the Irish DPC when they're taking a court case out against Europe, basically help Meta out. It's a very interesting situation where you've got the DPC advocating almost on behalf of a tech company against their European colleagues. I mean, politically, what a bizarre situation to be in.
I mean, you'd only see that, in the US.
Right, yeah, of course. So that's the first big piece of news.
Okay.
I mean, realistically, I think with these large tech firms, there's always a bit of bait and switch going on. And what I mean by that is, it's like when we find a judgment against, you can't use contracts for, we'll switch it to legitimate interest then.
Right.
Or, we're not getting valid consent. Well, we'll do this then. Oh, well, you can't use SCCs. Well, okay, we'll switch to this, the executive order then, And there seems to be like for every judgment we bring out, and these judgments take a long time, of course. But it is huge. I mean, let's face it. We are looking here at, 1.3 billion, which I know, in Facebook terms, I actually did the math earlier.
Yeah, I say, did you go do the math for us? I became a lawyer, so I didn't have to do the math, but.
Yeah, it was 1.4% of their last year's global annual turnover. There you go.
That's not shabby.
Yeah, 1.4% of their global annual turnover there.
Do you think they'll ever go up to a 4%?
I don't know. I mean,
that's what would be earth shattering.
That's got to represent the worst privacy thing in the world ever, right? And, so their turnover was 160 billion. We're looking here at, 1.3 billion in response to that. So it's just over 1%. Really, really sort of fascinating. But as the wise man once said, if you earn more money by parking your car illegally than the fine ticket, you've got to keep parking your car illegally.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly. You take that as the cost of doing business. And if it's worth the risk and the profit works, then yeah, it's the return on investment.
So, even though the headline sounds great, I think we're looking at a long road yet with appeals.
Yeah.
They've got a 6-month stay before they actually have to implement things. And anything could change in that next 6 months, including the safeguards under the new executive order. So
yeah, the thingy may actually work. So it reminds me, with you talking about 6 months, 6 months and appeals makes me think of the IAB and the TCF.
Yep. So it's a shame Paul isn't here because, of course, he loves to talk about the Belgian authority.
Oh, he loves legitimate interest for cookies, right? That's just his jam.
He does. And as we know, the Belgians found against the IAB Europe and said that their TCF, Transparency and Consent Framework, is neither transparent nor based on consent, essentially.
Right.
And so they've responded. They've brought out what they now call TCF 2.2. on the 16th of May, 2023. And that does a number of different things, one of which is removing the ability of the TCF vendors to rely on legitimate interests for advertising and content personalization, which they call and allow only consent as an acceptable legal basis for what they call purposes 3, 4, 5, and 6 at registration level. Now, it's an improvement. There's no getting away from the fact that's an improvement. We're getting rid of legitimate interests for purposes 3, 4, 5, and 6, but that leaves purposes 1, 2, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15,
right. 16, 17. Well, and they have 2 appeals right now, right? They have one in Belgium to the Belgian Market Court, and then they have an appeal to the Court of Justice of the European Union, CJEU, which does not roll off the tongue easily. And what they're appealing on is the foundation of the decision, which found that they are a joint controller because they do determine the purposes and the actions of the data. And 2, you'll have to remind me on the second one, is it whether or not the TC string qualifies as personal data, which I think they're going to lose that one because their argument is that it's not unique. Well, neither is an address. You can have 15 people living at the same address and that doesn't matter. It's IP. Yeah. So that part they're going to fail on. But what do you think about the part of them being a co-controller?
Yeah, I think that was the most interesting one.
That's why they got in trouble for so much of the rest of it.
I mean, they've come up with the standard, and the consent string does go back to them. So, are they determining means and purposes? The Belgian DPA says yes. They say no. I think that's got to be one for the courts.
But don't they have kind of it's not a real certification process, but don't they have like a process where they verify that the company is using the TCF correctly and adhering to their rules? And if they're making an independent decision that might go against the controller, that's a co-controller, because otherwise the controller would say, yes, we are using it right. And they would say, oh, yeah, we're wrong. We're sorry. You are using it right if they were a processor.
I mean, I'm not sure whether I necessarily fall along the lines of joint controllers, but certainly a controller in their own right, yes. Because they're determining their own means and purposes, right? They're determining their own means and purposes. Whether joint or not, I think is another question. But I think they're using it for their own means and purposes, which under law would make them a controller.
Yeah, and there is a difference between a joint controller and a co-controller, or a controller in common. I think the UK has a definition. Maybe joint and co are the same thing, and a controller in common is a little different. Yeah, here's some quirky nuances that only privacy geeks get into. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, controllers in common. Well, we don't really use the term anymore. It's a bit of an antiquated term, but yeah, it means more than one controller.
But I like it.
Flow. Yeah, more than one controller in a data flow. So, you could be an employer passing data to a pensions provider. You both be separate controllers because you've got separate legal relationships with the individual, but because you're passing data to each other as well, this whole controllers in common was sort of a UK legal term we banded around for a long time. And that's very different from a joint controller, of course, which are jointly determined.
I like the controller in common concept, though.
I've always said that, like cloud providers, even though they say that they're processors, obviously, they say sign our terms, conditions, and they're often more in control than the controller is, even though they say they're only a processor because,
Well, and we hire them for their control, their expertise, their ability to do with the data things that we can't do. So I'm eager for this term.
So how's this for a definition? If you've got a processor who's more in control of the data than you are, we should call them a controlling processor.
Oh, I was imagining you were going to go controller processor, but controlling processor, or processor in control.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, hey, we've just blown most people's minds, I'm sure, geeking out here. But that's not a legal definition that exists. I want to make that clear.
It's got the same legitimacy as the thingy.
Yeah, totally, yeah. But I think we actually, I think the GDPR is a little bit out of date in using concepts like controller and processor with this assumption that you as a controller can tell your processor what to do, when sometimes it's the processor telling the controller what their law is and what they're
Well, that's the whole thing. A lot of times we hire these processors, again, because of their expertise and their capabilities.
Yeah. As we are wont to do, we've wandered off topic a little bit. The other thing I should say, just to bring us back to the TCF, is, the other big change with TCF 2.2 from the IAB Europe is that vendors are going to be required to be a little bit more transparent, provide additional information about the data processing operations, what categories of data they're collecting, the retention periods per purpose, and not just say legitimate interests, but also what that legitimate interest is. You have to remember that actually legitimate interest isn't really a legal basis. You're supposed to say what your interest is and how it beats their essentially rights and freedoms, right? So, and that includes transparency over the number of vendors the CMPs will be required to disclose.
Which is going to be interesting. They have to disclose the number of vendors who are trying to establish a legal basis for the first layer of the user interfaces.
Exactly, yeah. And also, when you give consent, how to get out of it again. Make sure that's very easily done and easily withdrawable, which again, I don't think
is very unusual because it's a common requirement, but who actually does it?
Yeah. I've always had a problem, very much like Paul, and I'm sure Paul would fight me on this, that, even if you are relying on legitimate interests for advertising, which I personally, like Paul, don't believe you can do, quite often what happens is you can click reject all. They say, great, we're still going to do it under legitimate interests. Well, you can go into the settings and click object. I think my biggest problem isn't the fact they're using legitimate interests, but it's, well, if you click object, so what? Do you never get a notification back saying, oh, your objection's been upheld or it hasn't? I suspect they go, right, thank you. We register your objection and we're still going to do it anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. This is where I can hear Alexander Hanff just right?
Well, I'm going to see Alex in the next couple of days. He's presenting here at TPDP.
That's right. That's right. Tell him we said hello.
Yeah. And in fact, I also met Barbara and Marty here as well, who I came to know through doing this podcast. So it's been lovely to meet some people face to face.
That is awesome.
Wouldn't have done. So it's been a lovely event.
I was trying to get over there during this time and I took a new job and so have had my time scraped up by otherwise.
Isn't it amazing? And again, I hate to keep going back to the conference, but I mean, just the amount of people
Yeah.
in this industry who you meet. And I mean, today I've spoke to our friend Marie Penno, Tim Clements, Max Strems, of course, Stuart Dresner, Simon Hanier, Paul Jordan. I mean, the names that are here at the moment. And I've got to say, it's a privilege to be working alongside such luminaries. I mean, really, just people in the field.
It really is. It really is.
It is. And you know, I mean, we were all stuck in for the pandemic for a couple of years, but to be back out there amongst the sort of people I've met today and the sort of ideas that are coming out and the sort of things that we're discussing, you know, it gives me hope. You know, I've often said we're fighting the rear guard of a losing action when it comes to data, right? That's the way I've described my industry for a long, long time. We're fighting the rear guard of a losing action. But, you know, I'm actually for the first time, you know, come across here and we're from a thoroughly depressing situation in the UK and finding, you know, a degree of hope amongst my European colleagues. So.
That is nice to hear. And it's really nice to see all the developments globally. I think I saw something the other day. There are 137 countries out of 194. Now, the way you count the number of countries is very varied. But on this report, I think it was from the UN, 137 out of 194 now have privacy laws and essentially omnibus privacy laws that they have. And so it's heartening. It's heartening.
It is heartening. You know, my skepticism kicks in with, you know, that it doesn't be a level of enforcement that perhaps we struggle with, certainly in some, even here in Europe, you know, there's enforcement issues with people like the DPC and the ICO.
Yeah.
You know, when you're first starting up, a new regulator, you know, let's say in some of the countries in Africa or in South America or in Asia, you know, getting those first enforcement actions out the door, getting companies to listen to you, you know, can often be the trouble and the trick, right? You know,
well, and you learn from what other countries are doing. So you're watching, I mean, you're not just watching just what happens in Europe or just what happens in the UK or just what happens in China or just what happens in the US or Canada. You're watching what's happening in a lot of countries that are making interesting moves in what they're choosing to do.
Well, you know, in a few weeks' time, we're going to have the Global Privacy Assembly again in Bermuda.
Yeah,
which
we won't be going to that one.
Yeah. I'm gutted. I won't be there either, and I think Paul's going typically.
As he is.
the luxury horse.
Yeah. Paul, Ralph, you and I get to say we know Paul.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, you know, and on that point, actually, I should probably say congratulations to him because he took up posts for the work he's doing with the Jersey Commissioner as well. I understand he had a very productive first meeting in Jersey over the last week as well. So you know, I managed to pass on my congratulations to him face to face, and you know, I hope with the Commissioner out there, Paul Vane, they continue to do great work down there in Jersey. So you know, and I think people forget, you know, when we talk about 137 countries, you know, it's not just the Americas and the Chinas and the Europes of this world, you know. You know, you've had people like Emma Martin on the podcast, of course, and you know, the work that they're doing down in the Channel Islands and in some of the, I hate to say it, you know, smaller in terms of the number of people.
Well, they are smaller. Let's be frank; they are smaller. Are they? A lot of them about the same size as the states that we have here, and that's huge.
But things like Emma and Paul, you know, the commissioners in those smaller areas, they're still doing great work.
Yeah.
And Emma's Project BG, for example, is just incredible.
Oh, yeah, right. Absolutely amazing. So I agree with you. It's really, I hate to say it, but I'm going to do it. We're in a transformational time. We're actually seeing the moving and the grooving. Now, true, to be honest, you go outside the privacy network and most people have no clue that Texas just signed a law.
Yeah.
I get that.
To use another commentator, we're all on a journey.
Yes. We're all on the journey. Some of us are in a wagon. Some of us are in a Maserati.
Yeah.
We're all on the journey. We're all on the same path.
And I do think it's really interesting, actually, that we're still seeing some really interesting topics as well. We're seeing new topics pop up over here, like AI is obviously dominating the agenda at this conference that I'm at the moment. But equally, we're seeing old favorites pop up, privacy and programmatic advertising. And so we're still seeing an international transfer. So it's, you know, there's still some old favorites there, but equally we're seeing some of the new technology stuff kicking in. And what I'm really pleased about seeing on the agenda is a lot more work about privacy by design,
Yes.
being more proactive, not looking at data protection as a legal cost, but looking
Right.
at it as a proactive functional benefit, right?
Oh,
And so,
absolutely. Absolutely. You don't have to just work for a privacy company to be able to see that privacy is something that's added value to the company for the expertise that we bring.
yeah, exactly. So I know, Kay, we always want to keep these, fairly short to make sure the listeners can make sure that they.
We're not making them jog for 45 minutes.
We don't overstay our welcome, I was going to say. But I do want, before we go today, just finish off with a wonderful quote from Commissioner Didier Reynders today. He's talked about, obviously, the EU-US Privacy Shield,
Right.
Privacy Shield invalidation and its replacement by the executive order. And his last sentence will perhaps go with me for quite some time. And it was simply this. We know that with the new executive order, we will have a Schrems free. But this time, we hope the Commission and our US colleagues will win the final decision. Which I thought was an optimistic outcome for the European Commission and their US colleagues.
From his mouth to God's ears, or more importantly, to Max Schrems.
But I thought time will tell, and I thought that was a wonderful way to finish his to finish his moment in the spotlight and everybody there.
That is awesome. That's perfect. Well, Ralph, thank you once again for finding us. I do have to add our standard closing, which I don't have open in front of us, and I'm usually making faces at Paul while he's reading it if you ever hear him break while he's talking. But thank you. Thank you to our listeners. Please find us, listen to us on your favorite podcast application. Like us, make remarks, make a rating on us. The more you do that, the more other people can find us and can benefit from the wonderful wisdom that we bring to the privacy field.
And the comedy value.
Exactly. You can find Paul on social media at EuroPaulB on Twitter. You can find him on LinkedIn. You can find the podcast on LinkedIn under Serious Privacy. Please do join us there, ask questions, get involved. You can find Ralph on Twitter as...
At IGR O'Brien.
And you can find me as Heart of Privacy. So thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to connecting with you again. Ralph, love having you. So Paul usually says, until next time, goodbye.
Until next time, goodbye.
Bye, y'all.
Bye, y'all.
That was Serious Privacy.
If you're a data protection or privacy professional, you already know the pressure. Non-stop regulatory change, AI oversight, internal demands, and the expectation to somehow stay ahead of it all. And the old patchwork of tools just isn't cutting it anymore.
No. That's why TrustArc created a modern privacy management platform powered by Arc Intelligence. The TrustArc platform brings your workflows, evidence, research, tasks, and applications all together in one unified and intelligent workspace so you don't waste time digging, clicking, or context switching.
With Ask Arc, your privacy assistant, you can ask plain language questions about laws, jurisdictions, or even your own program data, and get credible, cited answers based on NIMBY research and more than 1,000 global laws. It's explainable, transparent, and purpose-built for data protection and privacy.
So if you need to add a vendor, create a cookie banner, or start an assessment, quick actions take formally complex tasks, turn them into bite-sized guided workflows to save you time.
It's a platform that thinks like you, works like you, and helps you move faster with confidence, whether you're a seasoned DPO or you're just getting started.
See how modern privacy gets done. Explore Arc at trustarc.com/serious-privacy. That's trustarc.com/serious-privacy.